And now a review of the pandemic year's expertly made and performed yet depressing as hell award-winning and critically lauded independent movie which you'll eventually watch so you can pretend you took the opportunity during COVID to expand your horizon and didn't just barely survive over a year of psychological lockdown torture by saying fuck it and indulging guilty pleasures, comforting nostalgia, the Disney app, and eventually thoughtful experimental narratives about guilty pleasures and comforting nostalgia produced for the Disney app, which incidentally also happens to be this year's expertly made and performed yet depressing as hell Oscar frontrunner you never heard of, but might watch a week before the show to pretend you have an informed opinion in your Zoom pool, and also, wow, pandemic hat trick, is this year's expertly made and performed yet depressing as hell award-winning and critically lauded independent movie that you will lie and pretend you already knew it's about to be superstar A-list director from before she becomes an overnight household name from directing the next billion-dollar global blockbuster based on a Marvel comic book from the 70s that even I need at least 3 open Wikipedia tabs to write about coherently. The Earth is healing.
You know, I saw a pod of whales when I was coming over the bridge.
If you're about to tell me to look on the bright side, I'm about to hit you in the head with a peanut butter sandwich.
I guess if you wanted a quick and tidy summary of what Nomadland is, or at least where it's coming from, what we've got here is some same depression, different millennium John Steinbeck riffing through a funhouse mirror, but, you know, without the fun part, because depression is in economic, spiritual, the great, etc. But since we're also following the solo exploits of a defiantly singular middle-aged woman through the resigned and unsure fractured alienation of late capitalism, rather than an angry young man through the tumult of early 20th century, the depiction of traveling impoverishment across a blighted American road culture and its contradictions have now been aesthetically inverted, romanticized but apocalyptic, here replaced by gritty yet open-ended, less prettification of the present, a touch more possibility of the maybe for the future, and righteous politically specific class anger still very much present, but much more fractious and foggy on all points but its battle of one against all central focus, the grapes of wrath having given way to the raisins of alienation. To put another way, it's a story about Frances McDormand as a poor, unhoused woman barely scraping by on seasonal odd jobs between Amazon warehouse employment who, upon meeting up with a community of fellow unrooted workers who've opted to convert their cars, RVs, vans, etc. into livable spaces and travel from place to place in search of jobs as a loose collective of modern-day nomads, opts to give the lifestyle a try and finds that, while profoundly difficult and even dangerous, it seems to work for her and may even be the best way to support what seems to be a non-stationary existence that she is driven to pursue even outside of work and travel for reasons that we can instantly tell are rooted in aching personal tragedy, but which, of course, the point of the story is to reveal gradually over the course of her meeting and interacting with people on her journey. It's the circumstance of those meetings that form the basis of what's meant to make Nomadland such a unique piece, and successful overall, I'd say. Directed by Chloe Zhao, and based on a non-fiction book optioned by McDormand and Peter Spears, the film's supporting cast features a mix of both professional actors and real-life nomad travelers who are featured as part of the book's reporting, portraying partially fictionalized versions of themselves whose stories and advice to McDormand's eminently receptive Fern are scripted but not necessarily read word for word on set, with the finished film taking shape largely through Zhao's unique, extensive post-production editing process. The result feels one part verite and one part hyper-real between the spaces, striking exactly the right balance between the literal, grimy realism of scenes where Fern and other nomads monotonously scrub toilets and empty dumpsters at rest stops for a period of pay, and the ethereal tableaus of Fern on her own, seeking out possibly meditative, maybe just quiet spaces among huge redwoods or gray rock beaches that look like alien worlds by comparison. It's easy to see how McDormand must have keyed in on the material as so well suited to her presence. Fern could have been an impossible protagonist in the hands of another star director team. At times she almost seems like a ghost of a person, and it doesn't seem to be an accidental affect on her part. We understand that she's suffering from powerful trauma upon first meeting her, and that it's related to how she came to be alone and unhoused is obvious, but the film builds mystery, though not an unnecessary amount, around the way she gently resists the efforts of David Strathairn as a fellow nomad, and less gently the efforts of extended family to offer her opportunities to leave the road and settle once again. And while we do come to know ultimately why she is where she is and why she makes the choices she ultimately does, it's less about the reveals and more about the understanding, which of course means that more than a few in the audience are likely to respond to Nomadland's eventual wrap-up, especially now that it's been so laden down with awards and praise, and sure to become ever more so, with a general sense of that's it, which honestly movie isn't entirely inappropriate. This is a small, intimate, quiet story that's had the grandeur of the moment thrust upon it by circumstances far outside the control of anyone. But if you're willing to meet it on its own terms, as a quiet work of character drama and a snapshot of a moment in the world, it's also quite powerful. 8 out of 10 gets my recommendation.